Hey guys, so if you've been watching my channel, you know I work with a lot of different mobile off-grid applications, and a lot of them are vans, and I think a lot of you are van life viewers. And I'm sitting inside of a really cool van right now. And moving forward, what I want to do is a little tour of every van that I'm working with, even if I'm only working on the electrical and none of the cabinetry or plumbing, which is typically the case. But it will give you an idea about some of these vans, some of which are DIY, some of them are like small artisanal van builders, some of them are larger production vans, and some of them are even, you know, larger like Winnebago. And I really like that idea, and I want to share, because I've been in this van building industry for a long time, what I like a few things about what I like about the van, and then maybe a few things that I don't like, and it sort of gives a little bit of a critique. Because I have been used to a very high quality of standard when we were building vans out in Portland. So I hope you like this new format. This is going to be a boho van. I'm really impressed with it. I don't know what I'll have to say negatively about it. Yeah, give my channel a like and subscribe. Hope you like the video, and see you in the next one. All right, guys, here we have a 2022 159 wheelbase ProMaster built out by Boho Vans. This is one of the dopest ProMasters that I've ever seen. And I've built a lot of vans. I've seen a lot of ProMasters. They're typically like the more of a budget build, but this is really impressive. First off, I like the dark exterior. I like the black method wheels. We got a black Fiamma up top. There's a couple bunk windows. Back here, there's some exterior add-ons, ladder. We pop up top, we can see a couple solar panels. This is an Orion roof rack, but it's sort of customized by Boho Vans. The client said this is one of like Boho Vans' early builds, which I believe. And they've probably come a long way. You know, we came a long way when we were working at the van shop in Portland. Let's take a look inside. I'll show you some things that I like, some things that I don't like. First off, we got a Transit retrofit seat in here, which is pretty nice. These are cheap ways to get a really secure third seat, and this family has a little one, so they have a place for the car seat and then a place for, you know, a booster seat, and eventually they can sit in there without anything. Tongue and groove cedar interior, top and bottom. Smells really nice in here, and the finish and the build is really nice. Nice window framing. Looks really good. The galley put together nice stainless steel fridge. I think it's kind of in the, yeah, it's in the vent position. Look at this wheel. I've never seen this before. I obviously don't know how to use it. Bench seats across from one another. I think this is sort of storage down here. Easy to lift up even with the cushion, which is nice. Over here is a toilet, which you lift up from the front. Looks like they have the ProMaster light in there, which is awesome. I mean, now you get to use the stock functionality, and when you don't have the lights on in here, we turn the ceiling lights off. The ceiling lights are over here, so you can't turn them on from the door. You can set this up so that when you open the sliding door, you have a little, you know, aisle light, and that's great. Also, they have this little wall here in between the dinette area and the bed, which I think is really cool because look, it gives you a place to put this awesome little pocket. It gives you a place to put this really cool piece of artwork. Hanging your Max fan remote, light switches, your heater control. Also, there's a cubby back here too for storing stuff that you might need when you're in bed. So I think that's awesome. There's one window over here and not one over there, which is, you know, maybe a personal preference. One thing I would say about these ProMasters is there's a lot of space in the walls. They could have added a frame without a window and given themselves maybe 3 additional inches in the bed. And that's something that I would have considered if I were building this van. I really like the ceiling lights, although the light is kind of shining right at my eyes and this LED is kind of really intense. So the, like, you know, the glow from the bottom is a good idea, but when you're standing in it, it's really kind of aggressive. If you just had puck lights, you know, dimmable puck lights, they could be shining down and not in your face like that. They do have that same type of light on the undercab, which is facing away from you. So no matter where you're at, it's not shining right in your eyes. But they also have puck lights there too. So yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. The upper cabinets are built with some tongue and groove boards, just probably glued together, and then there's a strapping or a block on the back. So it's a very simple design. We have a little route out on the bottom for the handle, which is nice and simple. The cabinets do seem to stick out a bit. I would say they're probably, I mean, that span is like 9 inches, so maybe 16 inches. Most of my upper cabs are either 12 or 14 inches deep. So these are a little big, but over the galley, it doesn't matter a whole lot. So I'm pretty impressed overall with this build. I will say one thing that I don't like is how they finished off the edge of this wall. And this is tricky to do for sure. So what they did is they took a piece of 1/4 inch and then they kind of routed it with the tongue and groove of the cedar. And it looks okay, but then they have to splice in a piece here. There's some puttying. And then as they get into this curve, you can see that they cut little, they cut out the back so that the wood can bend. And it's still kind of like blocky, and then they puttied all of that over, which is, you know, very obvious to the eye. And then once we get back into a straight shot, it's not as noticeable. But yeah, I mean, that's a tricky spot. There are different ways to handle that, and in this situation, I'm not quite sure what I would have done, but I could, you know, send somebody some pictures if they were interested. Let's go in the back and take a look at the electrical system, and then I'll describe what I'm going to do for these folks. Here we are in the back, same matching tongue and groove kind of door panels. I mean, that looks nice. I probably just would have left the original plastic there, maybe wrapped it in some fabric. You know, that looks decent. You see that a lot, but you hardly ever see this. And this cedar is really soft. That's one thing. I've built a few sprinters out with the cedar tongue and groove. It's very soft. It's easy to damage. And in the garage, when stuff is banging around, it's likely that you're gonna ding that up, but again, who really cares? Magnetic van made gear. I know who Simon is. We used to work with him in Portland a lot. These are high quality window coverings, and I highly recommend something magnetic and insulative for your windows, no matter where they are. It's just a really nice, easy feature to black out your van and, you know, keep the cold or the hot out. Now down here we have our plumbing area. So it looks like they just boxed off the wheel well. So there's likely just empty space inside of there, packed with some insulation, I'm gonna say. There's a stock water tank, probably from Class A Customs. Yep, Class A Customs up there. A bunch of different valves. That's PEX A. Is that PEX A? The stuff that you have to use like a spreader to get the fittings on. I don't ever really use that part or use that style, but some people do. This being vertical, whenever you go to open this and winterize it, you're always going to have water spill instead of having it horizontal where you can unscrew the cup and dump it. That hot water tank, that Bosch hot water tank, it's simple, it's cheap. It's been very popular on YouTube. And there's no way to winterize it except by bringing the whole thing out and dumping it upside down. Also, there's no vent going outside for the pressure relief. So if there is a buildup of hot water in there and it needs to escape, it's just going to spray all over the inside of the van. Electrical system over here is pretty modest. 2 Battle Born batteries wired in parallel. And they just have like, this looks like 4 gauge wire, maybe it's 1 gauge. And it's running in parallel. They're taking the positive and negative leads off of opposite ends of the bank, which is good. But there's this Multiplus compact. This is a 2000 watt inverter. And typically for that size inverter, you're going to want to use 2-aught cabling, which this is not 2-aught cabling. So it's a little undersized, or a lot undersized. I am going to be popping in 2 additional Battle Born batteries for them. And you see that there's space right there. So I may run larger cables in between each Battle Born battery, and maybe even add cables to the inverter if the client wants me to. And I'll definitely make that recommendation. Now, the main part of this build for me is taking out this max fan above the bed and adding in a 12-volt air conditioner. We are going to put in a Velit 2000R. It's a 12-volt unit. And then we're going to run power to it. And then we're going to move the max fan up there into the center location, right? So popping out this fan and adding in a 12-volt AC unit is going to be pretty straightforward. Let's go up on the roof. Popping this guy out and putting in the 12-volt air conditioner is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to lose a couple crossbars and this rear fairing, which looks pretty cool, but the air conditioner is going to extend out past this and probably end right about here, so we won't have that anymore. And then there's room in front to add the max fan, and so we're going to be just cutting a hole in the roof and through the ceiling, and using my tips and tricks that I've learned over the years to get that to get installed seamlessly and make it look good. The other trick is going to be running the wires for the AC without seeing them. So I'll give you my process. All right, first steps first are going to be just to take out all this stuff. We're going to take off this fan cover, take the fan out, take the crossbars off, open up that hole and see what we're working with. They use some serious silicone on here. This is probably that 3M marine silicone. I mean, it is tough. I'm worried that I'm not even going to be able to get this fan shroud off without damaging it. Do yourselves a favor, folks, and use something that's serviceable. An old kitchen knife is your friend here. Okay, I got all the old adhesive off. A lot of it just pulled off, but the stuff that was stubborn, I used a plastic scraper and some mineral spirits, and that cut through it like butter. Now, here's the gasket for the Velit. It's one piece, it's got adhesive on the bottom, and then they recommend running a bead of Sikaflex on the outside. They say underneath too, but I never do that. I just do a thick bead around the outside. Now, on the ProMaster, you can see the roof is corrugated, meaning when we put our seal down, it's not going to touch all of the roof. And what I've done in the past, like I described, right, is you build up the butyl tape and then put lap sealant over the flange if it's a max fan. But you can also use this. This is like a 2-inch wide piece of PVC I got at Lowe's or Home Depot. I 45 the ends, and then that fits right in there, and it's almost flat, completely flat. And then I take Sikaflex and I do a bead down the side, the bottom, and up. Squeeze that in and then just kind of rub it all around. And then that creates a flat surface all the way around. Then our seal can go down on top of that. Our spacers are in with some white Sikaflex. This is what I'm using, Sikaflex 221. All right, now I have Sikaflex all around the bottom of the seal, all around the spacers. The seal is stuck to the metal of the van. So what comes next is the air conditioner can rest on top of here. But before we do that, I'm thinking about the space in between the roof and the ceiling. You can see they use some foam board as insulation here. There's some missing right here because this doesn't go far in before it hits a cross member. But the brackets that squeeze the air conditioner to the roof are crossbars, and then you tighten them, and so everything compresses. But because of this space here and over here, we need to add something like a frame and build a little wood frame or something that fits in between the ceiling and the roof, so that when we squeeze it down, it doesn't deform either the ceiling panel or the roof. You can see this is really flexible, this part especially. All right, so I'm kind of reaching a place where I'm not quite sure how I want to proceed. You can see I have my cross member sort of between the ceiling and the roof. And I thought maybe I should do that, but maybe I need to have it below the roof to mount it. But I'm thinking the shroud might stick down too far. I'm also not sure if I totally need to take off this rear fairing. So I'm just going to do a test fit and then make some decisions. All right, nice thing is I'm going to get the air conditioner to mount in the hole without taking off this rear fairing. The bolts that hold this fairing on are pretty much touching, but it's just plastic there, and that's going to be okay. The bad part is I'm going to have to take the brackets from in between the roof and the ceiling and put them on the very bottom, which means we're going to have a gap on our shroud underneath, and I'll show you. So having our crossbar in between the ceiling and the roof means that our flange, our bezel on the bottom would come tight to here. But because this now is kind of blocking where the cables go, and that's the one thing I don't like about the Velit, is how the cables are connected with that big Anderson connector. I'm gonna have to take this out, and this is just gonna have to go on the bottom, which makes the install easier, but yeah, we'll see what happens at the end. So I cut a piece of 3/4, but now I'm gonna squeeze something else in there and then create a big block for maybe here and here, but still give room for the, because look at that, that's really flimsy, that's not good. But the cables need to pass through here too, so we got to keep that in mind. All right, well, I cut a piece to take up that gap there, but again, we need to get our cables, which is 2 like 6-gauge cables, through that roof and then out through all of this without seeing it. At least that's my plan. So I do know that this D pillar has some space there, and then obviously there's a pillar there that has a bunch of space and is available for chasing some wires. So next step is to just kind of pop this down and see if we can get in there. All right, we got this cover off, this very custom cover. You can see somebody's been doing some belt sanding on here to fit that wood to this very strange shape up here. They did an okay job. There's no insulation back in here, which is kind of a bummer, and I can see over here no insulation in there. Bummer. Also some THHN wire, which is also kind of a bummer. It's not what you should be building vans with. I use tinned high strand marine cable and wire in my electrical installations. But yeah, I think this is going to be good. I think we can get our cables through the roof. Well, I don't know. Here's our wiring harness and the stock A&L fuse holder that comes with this. This is something I do right away. Cut this right off because I'm going to use like a nice 285 series breaker switch. And now we can start running our cables back and see if there's an opening through that ceiling. Woohoo! Found an opening. Now we're going to drop it down again with our new battery connection. Now the AC's dropped back down. You can see where this fat Anderson connector is such a pain. I have my block over there. I Sikaflexed it to the ceiling so it wouldn't move around. We have this opening over here so that the Anderson connector can fit into there. Up front, I finally capped those wires for the old fan power. This whole unit needs to move back about 2 inches yet, but we're going to connect our Anderson plugs and then slide the AC back. All right, I went up top and straightened the AC out so it looks good from the outside. You can see we can see our threaded inserts, which is all we care about on the inside. Velit gives you 2 sections of this stainless steel M8 threaded rod. And that's to thread up into there. Now you do add a nut to that. I usually put thread locker right on there because it's hard to get a wrench and tighten that. And I definitely don't put this on the air conditioner before I drop it in. That's just asking for dents and scratches on your roof. So I always do it after the air conditioners drop down. But these threaded rods are almost 100% of the time too long. Right, so what I do is I come up here and I kind of estimate, and then I'll put one of the nuts on there and tighten it up and see how long my rod needs to be, and then I'll cut each one off with a grinder. Right, so here's my test fit, and this is going to be different for everybody, but mine's sticking down about 3/4 of an inch. And I've tightened it down so that, you know, we're compressing any small voids and the gasket. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 3/4 inch off of every of these long rods. Prepare the rod, put on a nut, put on some thread locker. Screw that in. If you can get a wrench on it, go, man, Sikaflex. All right, well, I cut my rods too short. So now when I put this bracket on, this is the only one that sticks out far enough for me to get the supplied washer and self-locking nylon nut on there. So my hopes are if I tighten this one down, it'll bring it down and I can get that one down, and then maybe it'll bring the AC down so I can get those on. That's kind of going to plan, and see, that's as far as I want my rod to stick out, because once the shroud goes on, it's going to bottom out on this nut, and you'll see at the end about the gap that forms, and I don't like the gap, but it might be workable. All right, here's the final product. All right, get rid of that. And yeah, there's a little bit of a gap up top, right? There's a 1/4 to 1/2 inch in different spots. And do you notice it? I mean, if you're looking for it, you're gonna see it. Are you gonna get used to that? Maybe. If it bothers them, we can do something, but you know, to build a shroud that matches, like it might look cleaner just to leave it. Anyway, now it's time to run these cables back through this D-pillar. So if you're familiar with the ProMaster, there's like a big plastic grate right here that can come off, and I've seen more than one van builder build completely over that, which sucks because if you ever need to change out a light bulb, you need to take this cover off. Looks like there's room to do that here, which is great. And look at that nice clean angle. That looks good. They matched it on the other side. That's great. Good job, Boho Vans. But for now, we're going to pop this off, run this cable back down through here to get it underneath, and then we're home free, and we can pop this cover back on. All right, success. We got our wires through, and we got a bunch of length that'll reach over to our power system. I'm not sure what they have going on over here, if it's bus bars. A lot of this stuff is hidden. We'll see. It looks like that whole inverter is on a door that can swing open. So that'll be phase 2. We'll check that out soon. All right, here's part 2 of this Boho Vans project. Part 1 was taking out a Max fan and putting in a Velit 12-volt air conditioner, running the cables through the ceiling, getting it down here. And then we were going to start adding the 2 Battle Born batteries that the client purchased and wanted to add it to the existing 2. But once I got in here and started looking at this electrical system, I'm like, man, there's some problems in here. For one, there's no battery monitor, so you have no idea how much power you're using or how much power you have left. The biggest cable in this system is 2 gauge, right? These 2000 VA Multipluses call for 2-aught cable. That's like, if you look at it in millimeters squared, 2-aught cable is 70 millimeters squared. 2 gauge cable is 35 millimeters squared. So it's like half as small, half as big as it needs to be. Yeah, we got a bunch of wires going to bus bars in here. There's no fuse on the battery. There's some random A&L fuses in here. We got a little self-resetting guy. We got cables stacked under washers. Got just a variety of kind of low-grade electrical installation. So I did go to the client and say, hey, we need to make some changes here. And they're like, yeah, sounds great, let's do it. So we're going to be recabling. We're going to be putting in a Lynx distributor. I'm going to be taking all of this out and just kind of reworking all of this just to make this safe and clean and the way it should be. All right, got all the components off, all the wires and all the wire ties, and I got this whole panel disconnected. So I'm going to take this whole wall out because I don't want any of these dividers in here. Here's that backboard I popped off. I basically just cut all those pieces off. I sanded it. I did a paint. Doesn't look pretty, but most of it's going to be covered. And now I'm working on my layout with all the components. All right, getting a little ahead of myself. I have our inverter, our MPPT, and Orion, our little breaker box. I have everything mounted. I have my batteries where I want them. I mean, this is where the batteries were from the stock Boho setup, and I just kind of added to I think I'm going to build like a little wall that screws into this big box, and then here, although this battery sticks out a little proud from this. Yeah, so I'm going to have to come up with something to just keep these batteries in. I considered just doing like a ratchet strap around the wall, holding them in, and then a ratchet strap over and just holding them down. I mean, that would be pretty simple. But I think I might build a little wall just to, I don't know, have them sit in something, and then still do a strap over top. All right, fast forward a couple hours, you can see we have our battery jumper cables on there. We have our AC lines coming through the D-pillar up and over. We have our shunt, we have our main on and off switch. We have our Velit AC breaker over there. We have our Class T fuse down there. I still have to run the main ground, but everything's mounted. I came down here to install my grounding cable, and even though I measured from the back of the van forward, I didn't hit the right spot. My hole through the floor came into this cross member. So instead of drilling another hole through the floor, I decided to drill a little hole in the side of the cross member and pop my ground cable out through there. And I did get some 5/8 loom on it, and then mounted it to the frame over here. Stripped the undercoating, put on some dielectric grease over the bare metal, toothed the washer, self-tapping stainless steel screw there. All right, everything is connected except for the little DC fused circuits. But before I turn everything on, I'm going to install a little wall here, and I'm going to use some reclaimed material that I took off the electrical enclosure, and yeah, just come up with something clever. Well, of course, I forgot about the BMV cord. So right after I finished vacuuming everything up and cleaning up, I had to go drill a massive hole all the way back in there and got sawdust all over everything. But this is the cord that goes from the shunt all the way to the LCD readout. And luckily there's this little, I found a secret compartment back in here under this wall, so I can bring my cord out through there, run it up through here, and then get my BMV readout right there. All right, this is turning out nice. All of this extra wire that comes with the BMV, which is great if you have a really far run, but most of the times I just have to bundle this up and then I have to put it somewhere. And in this case, I'm gonna just stuff it into this wall. Then we're gonna have our readout mounted right here. I tried really hard to get the top of that to be even with the top of the heater. I think it's pretty good. All right, looks like it was meant to be there. All right, here's our final installation. We now have 4 Battle Born batteries sitting on top of the wheel well. All of our electrical system and components are remounted in a very easy to see and work on orientation. We have fuses and breakers where there previously were none. We have a battery monitor BMV 712 shunt there on the wall. Our AC lines are running out of the D pillar up along the wall into their own individual breaker over there. It's actually a 100 amp, and I'm going to replace it with an 80 that's in the mail. The clients also now have a functioning Velit 12v air conditioner where the Max fan previously was. I was able to get the Max fan up there in front of the air conditioner, but behind the solar panel, so they're able to use that. In this beautiful Boho van. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Check out Boho Vans on their website, and stay tuned for more really awesome installs.